The first openly gay candidate for president was in Chicago this past weekend for a campaign fundraiser and a book signing. Republican and former Chicagoan Fred Karger sat down with Tony Maravich to discuss the campaign.
You come back home and you see these people who you've known for a long time, but now you're the first openly gay presidential candidate. What do people even tell you? What do they say to you when they see you? I don't think a congratulations would be enough,
Well, it's very interesting for me. This has been a whole transformation, and I have a book out, Fred Who, talking about my life and living in the closet for most of it. And there are a lot of these friends that were there last night, one of whom, a guy named Gary Wolfson, was a very close friend of mine, and he's the first one who asked me at my parents' house. And it was, I can't tell you how frightening that was, and he did a wonderful job of kind of setting the stage by saying, my girlfriend has a sister who's a lesbian, and we hang out with her friends all the time, and I'm completely comfortable with that. And it made it pretty easy for me, but I had internalized this for so many years. I was so afraid of my family finding out, for fear that I would be thrown out of the house, that I didn't want any of my friends to know, because, it was a small universe. And so that very first, talk, as I call it, the talk, went really well with Gary. And then one by one, and I remember them vividly, I had the talk with all my different friends, and then eventually with my family. So coming back where many of them were last night, to show my sizzle reel, I call it, which is about all the difficulty I've been facing as an openly gay candidate in certain circles, and to have them there, and they all have written out checks, and they're all so supportive and backing me in this. It's incredibly gratifying. And so, I'm trying to change some hearts and minds out there. And because of the fact that I've got these good Republican credentials, having worked for Reagan and Ford and George H.W. Bush, it's surprising, and this was not the way this was supposed to be. It was supposed to be a Democrat who, like a Barney Frank or Tammy Baldwin or someone, Annise Parker, the mayor of Houston, somebody who kind of worked his or her way up, who was a progressive Democrat. Well, instead we got this guy, a progressive Republican. I had thought, because particularly of the goodwill I had created because of my activism on Prop 8 and boycotting for the biggest donors, of discovering the Mormon Church's involvement, of getting them personally investigated and found guilty and fined and prosecuted, and same with my continued harassment and the National Organization for Marriage, the number one organization out to destroy us, got them investigated. And in the state of Maine, even Brian Brown, their president, was deposed. They replied in kind and subpoenaed me in a federal lawsuit. Just personally, it's going to cost me tens of thousands of dollars. And so I had hoped I'd build up some goodwill because of that. I completely understand the tremendous animosity towards the Republican Party, because all the bad laws have come from Republicans, and I've spoken to that long before I even became involved in this presidential race. We need to stay with the Republican Party and change it and not completely abandon it, because if we do that strategy, and if I and every other gay Republican left, then we would be completely beholden to the Democratic Party. And I've got to tell you, President Obama didn't do all he could have done as president with a Democrat House and Senate his first term. And so we can't rely on that. They'll take us for granted. It's common with any minority. We need to keep holding their feet to the fire.
Karger will be making one more stop in Los Angeles before attending the Iowa caucuses in January.